Most adults in this country have spent decades brushing faithfully, twice a day, good toothbrush, name-brand toothpaste, and still ended up in the dentist's chair with a new cavity. I have watched this happen to folks over and over again. And every time, the dentist says the same thing: brush more, floss more, maybe try this special rinse. Then the bill arrives. Then it happens again. At some point, the honest question is not whether you are brushing enough. The honest question is whether brushing was ever going to be enough in the first place. I have spent a long time paying attention to how certain communities, people who live without fluoride treatments, without electric toothbrushes, without twice-yearly professional cleanings, manage to hold on to their teeth in ways that quietly shame a lot of modern dental advice. What I keep coming back to is this: brushing removes what is already on the surface. It does almost nothing about the deeper conditions that allow cavities to form. And until you address those conditions, you are mopping the floor while the faucet runs. Before we go further, I want you to know that the guide that goes alongside this channel goes much deeper into all of this than I can here. It covers the mineral connection, the daily routine, and the reasons your teeth may be weakening after 50, in ways that brushing simply cannot fix. Open the camera app on your phone right now and point it at the QR code in the top right corner of the screen. It will take you straight to the guide. And that QR code stays up in the top right corner for the entire video, so you can scan it anytime while you keep watching. No need to stop right now. So let me explain what is actually happening inside your mouth when a cavity forms, because most of what you have been told skips the most important part. Your mouth is not a static environment. It is constantly shifting between two states, one that slowly dissolves the mineral surface of your teeth, and one that slowly rebuilds it. The technical words for these are demineralization and remineralization, but the plain version is this: your enamel is always either losing minerals or gaining them back. Brushing addresses neither of those processes directly. Brushing removes plaque, which is useful. But plaque is not the primary villain here. The real problem is the acid environment that plaque bacteria create, and the conditions that allow that environment to persist hour after hour, day after day. When bacteria in your mouth consume sugar and refined carbohydrates, they produce acid as a byproduct. That acid drops the pH of your mouth below the point where enamel stays stable. At that point, minerals begin leaching out of the tooth surface. This happens whether you brushed 5 minutes ago or not. The brush already did its job. What is driving the damage now is chemistry. Specifically, an acidic environment your saliva cannot neutralize fast enough. Researchers at the University of Rochester documented this process in detail as far back as the 1940s, when Basil Guggenheim and others began mapping how Streptococcus mutans, the primary cavity-causing bacterium, produces lactic acid within minutes of encountering fermentable sugar. The pH of your mouth can drop from a healthy 7.0 down to 5.5 or below in under 5 minutes after a sugary snack. Enamel begins dissolving at 5.5. That means the damage clock starts almost immediately, and it runs for the better part of an hour before your saliva can fully buffer the environment back to safety. This is the part that toothpaste commercials leave out. They show you a gleaming white smile and tell you their formula protects enamel. And I will be direct with you. Most commercial toothpastes are designed around a surface problem. They clean the surface. Some carry a small amount of fluoride, which can help tip the mineral balance slightly. But they do nothing meaningful about the dietary patterns, the frequency of acid exposure, or the mineral availability that determines whether your teeth are gaining strength or quietly losing it. You can use every premium product on the shelf and still lose that battle if the underlying conditions are working against you. Folks in communities that have avoided modern dental products for generations tend to do a few things differently. I have looked at this carefully, and what stands out is not some exotic secret. It is a combination of much lower sugar consumption, a diet that provides consistent mineral supply, and mouth care habits that actively support the remineralization process, rather than just cleaning the surface. These are not dramatic interventions. They are slow, steady, and they work precisely because they address the problem where it actually lives. The first shift is diet, and I know that is not what people want to hear. But the frequency of acid exposure matters enormously. Every time you eat or drink something with sugar or refined starch, your mouth enters an acidic phase that can last 30 to 45 minutes. If you are snacking throughout the day, even on things that seem harmless, your mouth may spend the majority of daylight hours in a demineralizing state. Brushing between meals does not reset that clock. What resets it is time, saliva flow, and giving your mouth real intervals between acid exposures. Consider what that looks like in a typical American day. A sweetened coffee at 7 in the morning, a mid-morning granola bar at 10, lunch with a soda at noon, an afternoon handful of crackers at 3, dinner at 6, and a small dessert at 8. That is 5 or 6 separate acid exposures spread across 13 hours. The mouth barely has time to return to a neutral pH before the next wave hits. By contrast, communities with low cavity rates, including isolated Swiss alpine villages studied by Weston A. Price in the 1930s, were typically eating 2 or 3 structured meals with no snacking between them. Not because they were disciplined in some heroic way, but because their food culture simply did not include it. The second shift is minerals. Your enamel is made almost entirely of a calcium phosphate compound. When the body has an adequate supply of calcium and phosphorus, and when your saliva is doing its job, it can deposit those minerals back into softened enamel during the remineralizing phase. The issue is that many adults, particularly after 50, are not getting consistent mineral supply from food, and their saliva flow may be reduced by medications or dry mouth conditions. Without those minerals in circulation, the remineralizing phase cannot do much. The enamel stays soft and vulnerable. More than 400 commonly prescribed medications list dry mouth as a side effect, including many blood pressure medications, antihistamines, antidepressants, and diuretics. Saliva is not just a lubricant. It carries calcium and phosphate ions directly to the tooth surface and maintains the near-neutral pH that makes remineralization possible. When saliva flow drops by even 30%, the protective window between acid exposures shrinks dramatically. This is one of the primary reasons cavity rates climb after 50, even in people who have never had significant dental problems before. If you want to understand this mineral connection more deeply, specifically what your teeth are hungry for after 50 and where to find it, open your camera app and point it at that QR code still sitting in the top right corner of the screen. The guide walks through exactly this territory in more detail than I have time for here, and it is the kind of information that genuinely changes what you reach for at the grocery store. The third shift is the daily routine that actually supports remineralization instead of working against it. And this is where the old, simple habits start to make a lot of sense. Baking soda has been used as a tooth care agent for well over a century, long before modern toothpaste existed. The reason it has lasted that long is not because people were uninformed, it is because it works. Baking soda is mildly alkaline, which means it neutralizes acid in the mouth directly. When you brush or rinse with a small amount of baking soda, you are actively raising the pH back toward a range where remineralization can occur. You are not just cleaning the surface. You are changing the chemistry of the environment. Sea salt adds a different dimension. Rinsing with a mild salt solution helps reduce inflammation in the gum tissue, supports healthy saliva production, and creates conditions that are inhospitable to the bacteria most associated with decay. Salt has been used this way in folk medicine for as long as anyone can trace, not because it is trendy, but because it addresses real biology in a simple, inexpensive way. The routine I have come to respect is straightforward. A small amount of baking soda, about a quarter teaspoon, mixed with enough water to form a loose paste, used gently on the teeth a few times a week. Not every day, because baking soda used too aggressively over time can affect enamel surface. A few times a week, gentle application, rinse thoroughly. Pair that with a warm sea salt rinse after meals when you can manage it, just a half teaspoon of plain sea salt dissolved in a cup of warm water, swish for 30 seconds, spit. That is the basic practice. No fancy packaging, no subscription refill. The cost is genuinely negligible. Now, there is one more piece that I promised earlier, the part that quietly undoes all of this for most folks, and it is this: timing. The single most common mistake I see is brushing immediately after eating. I understand why it seems logical, but when your enamel is in a softened post-meal state, scrubbing it is the worst time to apply mechanical force. The old practice of waiting at least 30 minutes after eating before brushing exists for a real reason. Let your saliva do its initial work first. That window matters. Oil pulling is another practice worth mentioning here, though I want to be straightforward about it. Swishing a small amount of oil, traditionally sesame or coconut oil, around the mouth for several minutes before rinsing has been used in traditional communities for a very long time. The evidence base for it is mixed, and I will not oversell it. What I will say is that anything that increases saliva flow, reduces bacterial load, and does so without introducing chemicals or abrasives is unlikely to do harm and may well help. If you are curious, try it on alternating days for a few weeks, and pay attention to how your gums feel. That is the honest answer. So let me bring this together, because I want you to walk away from this with a clear picture. Brushing is a useful tool. Keep brushing. But if you are only brushing and expecting that to hold back cavities, you are relying on one tool for a job that requires at least three. You need to manage acid exposure, which means reducing snack frequency and giving your mouth real rest between eating. You need to supply the minerals that remineralization depends on, calcium and phosphorus, from real food. And you need a daily habit that actively supports the mouth's own repair process rather than just sweeping the surface. The baking soda and sea salt routine is the practical expression of that third leg. None of this costs much. A box of baking soda and a bag of sea salt together run a couple of dollars and last for months. The dietary changes cost nothing at all. In fact, cutting the snacking usually saves money. The whole approach pays for itself the very first time it helps you leave the dentist without a new procedure on the bill. If you want the full breakdown, including what teeth specifically need after 50, and the daily routine laid out step by step, open the camera app on your phone and point it at the QR code in the top right corner of the screen. The guide covers the mineral story, the baking soda and sea salt routine in detail, and the reasons enamel weakens with age that most folks never hear about. Scan it there while you have got the video up. And if this channel's approach has been useful to you, the plain-spoken, no-nonsense look at what actually works, I would be glad to have you stay. There are folks here who have been asking good questions in the comments for a while now, and the community is worth being part of. Consider subscribing if you have not. Before you go, I want to ask you something. Did anyone ever teach you a home remedy for tooth care when you were growing up? A grandparent, a neighbor, someone who did things the old way? Leave it in the comments. I read them, and some of the best information on this channel has come from people sharing what was passed down to them. The next video I am working on goes into why the gum line is where most serious trouble starts after 50, and what the Amish do about that before it becomes a problem. That one is worth staying for. Take good care of those teeth. They are meant to last a lifetime.